Now we turn to Vice Chairman Ken Martin, who joins us from Monoman, Minnesota. He is also the chairman of his state party and the president of the Association of State Democratic Committees. Mr. Chairman, thanks for being here. You heard the three scenarios Connell laid out and Chairman Whatley's argument for why it's going to be another Trump bump on Election Day. I take it you disagree, but the swing state shift, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris.
Well, it's just that the swing state shift, that 1.72 points or so between national and swing state polls, has been an iron law of politics for more than a decade. At less than a point in the national average, why wouldn't we expect the vice president's lead to evaporate in the Electoral College?
Well, look, first off, Chris, thanks for having me. I'm here in chilly northern Minnesota joining you today. I'll tell you, I've been in 13 states in the last couple of weeks, and I'll tell you what we're seeing on the ground is a record enthusiasm and excitement for Vice President Harris's campaign. And, you know, look, the reality is I tell everyone, ignore the three Ps, polls, pundits, and Politico. Just ignore them all right now. It's a little cliche to say, but the reality is the only poll that matters, of course, is the poll on Election Day. And one of the reasons we're buoyed not only is the early vote returns that we're seeing throughout the nation, but also the fact that throughout all the battlegrounds, the only campaign that really has a sizable on-the-ground operation capable of actually getting their supporters to the polls is the Harris-Walz campaign. And in the end, if you believe that this is a tied game in the final quarter of the game, the tie has to go to the campaign that actually has the organization on the ground to get their voters and their supporters to the polls. And in all these battlegrounds, the only presence we're seeing on the ground in any sizable fashion is the Harris-Walz campaign. And so I am really confident in the end, not only with the early vote returns that we've seen, but also with the ground game that we have, that we'll be successful on election night. Look, we've built this campaign from the very beginning, by the way. We knew this was going to be a close campaign, and we built it, and we're prepared for it.
Okay, most of the vice president's closing argument has been pitched to high propensity, moderate kind of suburban voters who she hopes to persuade with arguments about January 6th and Donald Trump's fitness for office. But it's no secret that Democrats are worried about younger voters, particularly men. What do you say to the argument that these guys are going to turn out in force for Donald Trump in numbers we haven't seen before and put him over the top?
Well, you know, look, we're doing much better with younger voters than the Trump-Vance campaign. In fact, in our early vote returns, we're seeing a much younger and more diverse early vote electorate than we've seen in the past. And 55% of the early vote right now are women. And so as it pertains to the early vote, we feel really good about what we've seen so far. And look, I think it's a little bit of a risky gamble on behalf of the Republican Party and the Trump campaign to bet on low propensity voters. They're low propensity for a reason. It means they're infrequent voters. It takes a lot to get them to the polls. And again, it takes an organization and an operation on the ground to get those infrequent voters to actually show up. And so it seems to be a risky gamble right now. We're focused on people who vote. We're focused on people who have been part of the electorate. And we're focused on the broad coalition that Harris-Walz have built and making sure they get to the polls this Tuesday.
Okay, one of the main arguments for picking your governor, Tim Walz, as her running mate, was the belief that neighboring Wisconsin and their Michigan would be helped by having a Midwest governor on the ticket. So, question, why is Kamala Harris doing better in Georgia than Michigan in the latest New York Times Siena poll?
Well, we've said from the beginning, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, they've been close from the very beginning of this election, and nothing's really changed there. It's going to be close all the way to the finish line. But one thing we do know is Tim Walz's success of governing here in Minnesota, what he's been able to do to actually help people who are struggling to afford their lives is exactly the story that Kamala Harris has been telling throughout this whole campaign. They have a record of success, both Vice President Harris, along with Joe Biden, and Governor Tim Walz here in Minnesota.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.